What's up, my brother?
Is EX Runner Roger a must-have unit right now? Because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and the more I look at the current meta, the more it feels like Roger isn't getting stronger. The game itself is making him stronger, and if that's true, then what's happening in OPBR right now might be a bigger shift than we realized. For the longest time, whenever a character became relevant again, we always had a simple explanation. They got buffed, they got better support, or a new support tag, their counters disappeared. But when I look at Runner Roger, that explanation doesn't fully work, because this unit has survived so many different metas. He gets countered, disappears for a bit, and then suddenly he's back in League again. And that made me realize something. Maybe it's not Roger adapting to the meta, maybe the meta keeps shifting toward Roger, and that's a completely different perspective. Now let's talk about one of the biggest turning points, Blackbeard V2, because when he released, he didn't just introduce another strong EX, he changed how fights feel. He punishes DF users, he disrupts mechanics, he forces players to think differently. And when a unit like that exists, characters that rely less on gimmicks and more on fundamentals start to age better. That's exactly where Roger sits. He's not built around complicated mechanics. He's built around pressure, timing, and decision making. So when the game slows down into more fundamental fights, Roger naturally becomes valuable again. And this is where my conspiracy really starts. Yes sir, I genuinely think OPBR is slowly leaning toward Haki-focused characters. Look at Roger as a design. He doesn't rely on a devil fruit, he doesn't rely on spamming, he relies on raw presence and momentum. And that kind of design doesn't expire easily, because power creep usually hits mechanics first, but fundamentals, those stay relevant. And that's why Roger keeps coming back. Every time the meta changes, he somehow fits into the new environment again. Not because he changed, but because the game changed around him. Think back when Roger or Runner Roger, EX Runner Roger first dropped. EX Zoro was one of the big answer to him, and at that time the matchup felt balanced. Roger had pressure, but Zoro could fight back hard. But as the meta evolved, EX Zoro slowly got pushed down. Yeah, it hurts, but it is what it is. New threats appeared, new priorities emerged, and suddenly Roger didn't feel as restricted anymore. Right now, sure, there are still answers like S-Snake can counter Runner Roger, but he's manageable. I mean, S-Snake is still manageable. Even with amazing units like the recent Whitebeard adjustment, Roger is still playable in my opinion, and that's what stands out the most to me. Most EX units have a clear window where they dominate and then fade. Roger doesn't really fade. He just waits for the meta to circle back. Based on my own experience, and this is interesting because I actually don't have Roger V2, but whenever I fight against him, even during the Gear 5 V2 era, it always feels like if the Roger player has a good build and solid stats, he can literally one-tap me. And yeah, of course, he's a dark element and Gear 5 V2 is light, so naturally he's going to hit hard, but that's not really my point. My point is that no matter what meta we're in, Roger, whether it's a V1 or V2, is always somewhere in the game. Do they dominate every season? Not really, but the fact that an old EX can stay playable across multiple metas, that's actually insane longevity. And if we're talking about value, that kind of lifespan makes Roger one of the best long-term investment you can have in OPBR. And we can't ignore the fact that Roger is dark element, because dark units right now are becoming more relevant, more viable, more pressing, more impactful. So not only is his kit naturally strong in a fundamental sense, the environment is literally becoming more favorable for him. And when both of those things happen at the same time, a unit starts to feel timeless. If this trend continues, if OPBR really is leaning toward Haki-focused power, then the next logical step feels obvious. Shanks. Because right now, Roger is basically the only EX level character representing that pure Haki type of thingy, right? Dark Rayleigh is solid. Yeah, he's still solid, but he's not an EX, so his impact ceiling is limited. Buffing Shanks would balance that space, in my opinion. It would create a true Haki identity in the meta. And honestly, it feels like something a Bandai would eventually do. So, does this mean everyone needs Roger? Not really. Should you wait for Roger V1 and Roger V2's Ray-Banner and Whale on it? Not necessarily. But it does mean something important, in my opinion. If you invest in units that rely on fundamentals, map control, pressure, decision making, those units tend to last longer across the meta. Who are those units? Look at Kuzan. Map control is insane, right? Yeah, he's still getting cooked, but still playable. Kizaru still have that map control, pressure, still good in the meta. Who else? Look at Whitebeard right now. Does he have map control? Does he have pressure? In my opinion, if there's no counter, yeah. Look at Garp. Does he have pressure? Yes, sir. Map control? Yes, sir. Look at Blackbeard. Now, I think you kind of know where I'm coming from, right? So, those units tend to last longer across the metas. And Roger is one of the best examples, in my opinion. He's not just strong because of numbers. I think he can still function as a runner. And not just a runner, he can still function as a runner in every meta, which is insane. So, is EX Runner Roger a must-have unit? Maybe not, because he's not the most broken. Maybe not, because he don't dominate every matchup. But I think yes, because he fits almost every version of the game. And that's rare in my opinion. Roger isn't surviving the meta by accident. He's surviving because the game keeps shifting, or the meta is shifting toward the kind of character he was designed to be. And if that trend continues, Roger might not just stay relevant, he might be the blueprint for what stays relevant in OPBR. And I'm thinking this though, maybe the meta doesn't decide who's strong. Maybe it just reveals who was built to last. And you know what, my brother? That's it for this video. You know the drill. Stay salty and stay awesome and salty rock. Now signing off.